Welcome back
Yay.
to Covenant Culture Podcast. Yo, we are in episode 13?
No, this is 14.
14? Episode 14, y'all.
That's right.
And today we're going to be talking about communication.
Yeah, talk to me.
Come and talk to me. I really want to meet you, girl. I really want to know your name.
If we had a sound guy, I would say just
come and talk to me.
all right.
Come and communication.
So communication is a big problem.
Yes, it is. It can be a big problem.
Well, it's a big problem. I was going to say I didn't finish my thought.
Overall?
For most couples.
True.
So it doesn't matter where you land. I think this is actually an interesting piece. We've been counseling a couple who's dealing with a really big thing in their marriage, and just not that anyone would know who I'm talking about, but just to kind of conceal that well. They're dealing with feels like a monster in their marriage. And with that being said, communication feels like it's such a problem. But my thought on that is communication would be a problem anyway, right? So now you have a monster in the middle of this communication piece. So once you can kind of nail down communication, even when that monster in your marriage comes, at least you have the proper tools to address it and you're equipped.
Yes.
And I think that's kind of key because communication is an issue for anyone.
Yes. And remember, to communicate, the root word is commune.
Yeah.
Right? It means to be established one another, to go toward one another, to be in sync with one another.
Yeah.
And the thing about communication and relationship is that it builds over time.
Yeah.
Right? So there are fundamental aspects of communication, right? Body language, eye contact.
Can say body language a lot.
Right?
Yes.
Right?
Eye contact.
Right? But here's the thing about relationship and communication is the deeper you get in the relationship, the more communication is needed.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's kind of like a dance when you were saying the back and the forth, and it's so true. Like there is in each conversation, there's going to be someone kind of leading it, giving their heart. That's when we talk a lot about the grace space because just like you said, like depending on the level of where the communication is or needs to go, it can really be deep.
Yeah.
So there has to be this opportunity that I'm going to talk to you. You're going to look at me with what?
Your face.
Your face. We've discussed this one. Like you can say that you're looking at me or that you hear me.
Yeah.
But when you're not looking at me or listening with your face, that's
Correct.
what we say, then to me, it appears you're not, right?
Yeah.
Honestly, one of my top biggest issues with any individual is when you're speaking with them and they're texting.
Yeah.
Because you can't hear me. You're thinking about what you're doing and you don't
true.
hear me. You might not be looking at me, but you definitely can't hear me because you're in a thought, right?
Yeah.
Or playing a game. That's sometimes with us.
Yeah. Or
With
being
you,
on
I should say.
Instagram.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Or
Yeah.
sometimes with us. You feel me?
Yeah. Okay.
And so, but you know what? You trigger something is that in communicating, we come into a relationship with the foundation of how we communicated growing up.
Yeah.
Right. So we bring that. So there's this innate in us way of communicating. And we've been counseling couples for a very long time. And all the communication stories are always funny, right? Like you'll hear things like, in my family, we had unresolved issues. If something happened, we just never talked about it, right? Yeah. Or in my family, everyone yelled. That was my case, right? That was to them, that was a form of communication.
Right.
The problem is when you get into a marriage, that form of communication might not work.
Yeah.
So even though you're wired that way, you have to find the form of communication that works for you, right? Where were we? We was just somewhere and there was a landline phone on the counter. Where were we at?
Keep going.
Okay. So we were somewhere and I grew up in the 80s, right? So landline phones was for real. They hung on the wall. There was a long cord, right? You're not going to see another landline phone because the way of communicating has changed.
Right.
Right? Now it's cordless.
Yeah.
So over time, the way of how we communicate can change. Right? Yeah. Now that I've gotten to know you, now I know your need in a certain way in how I communicate. I want to meet that need.
Yeah.
Right?
That's good.
So listening with my face.
That's right. And then just the source, like we're in this kind of analogy mode right now, but for instance, the game telephone, right?
Yeah.
Back to that telephone, going to someone else and then they say to someone else and they say to someone else. And when the message comes out, finally, it's not the same.
No.
And that's what you want to be careful in a relationship, because yes, I can talk to my friend. Yes, I can go over here. Yes, I could talk to a mentor. Not that those things are bad.
Yeah.
But you're the one I need to talk to. So
Yeah.
I need to make sure that when I say it to you, this is what I actually mean. This is what's coming out.
Yeah.
Right. And that it is filtered appropriately. But a filter isn't necessarily saying it to everyone else.
Right. Right. Yeah.
It's making sure that this is a biblical way of saying it.
Yeah.
And that what I am saying matters, and that I'm actually saying what I mean, how I mean it.
Yeah.
And honestly, sometimes that's the hardest thing. You can get tongue-tied because I know what I'm trying to say and you don't understand me. So the communication has to go back to a place from you that you've actually thought it through. You don't want to just off the cuff. That's why we talk about timing, right? Off the cuff. I'm so angry, and let me tell you this, and this, and all the things the ways you've hurt me, and all of that. We have to get our mind together, bring in our thoughts, sometimes take notes for yourself before you have a real conversation that matters.
And remember, there's two ends to communicate. So there's a receiver and the giver, right? In every relationship. So if I want to communicate something to you, I'm giving something. But on your end, you're receiving something. So I think the foundational principle of communication is intentionality and humility. So if there's really something we need to communicate about, I need to be humble enough. And like you just said, how I say it, when I say it, but I have to be intentional in saying it.
That's good.
Right?
Yeah. And recognize just because you say it and you feel that way doesn't mean that that's the only way.
Correct.
Right. And we just had this actually big real life example a couple weeks ago. And I knew that I was correct. I'm sorry. I know how that sounds.
She's always right.
Would you like me to bring up the example?
Sure, go
to
ahead.
the people? Oh, you would? Okay.
Yeah.
So just certain TV programs, there are things we have committed as a couple that we're not going to watch.
Yeah.
So when I found out that you were watching something that I was like, I thought we're not going to watch that.
Yeah.
And your response was you fast forwarded it.
Yeah.
Right. For me, I'm like, hold on, hold the phone.
Yeah.
Okay. We're on the whole phone today. Because this is what we've committed to.
Yeah.
So we're not going to go outside of the box of that. So I knew in this communication to you that I was correct. This is what we've already solidified. This is what we believe. This is who we are. So when I'm addressing you in this moment, it matters how you feel and what you think, but I'm also not going to waver from this is what we discussed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And us committing to that commitment, I still need you to trust me that there was no intentional me trying to watch something I know doesn't honor our marriage.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because now I'm accountable to God first, then you. So I know if it's not honoring to God.
And I tell on you anyway.
If it's not honoring to God, it's not going to be honoring to you.
Right, right.
So, but even in that communication, I still have to filter through my feelings, and I have to close my eyes to articulate this. I had to articulate through my feelings of the situation to still give you my point of view in what happened and why. That makes sense?
Yeah.
And so once I can filter through my thoughts, you filter through your thoughts, we're going to come to a common ground for our marriage.
Yeah.
And we know that we are not going to watch things that's not honoring to God and not honoring in our marriage.
That's right. So I think for me, the important thing to pull out of this is, yes, you had to get there in your communication, but so did I. Because as much as I was not trying to be accusatory, I wasn't trying to be angry. I was truly coming from a place of like, whoa, wait, huh?
Yeah.
Right? I'm calling this out because that's what we do.
Yeah.
That's what a spouse does. This is accountability. I'm going to make sure you're good and make sure you're keeping to the word and what we've discussed and decided.
Yeah.
So even in that, though, I couldn't assume, because assumicide is real. We've discussed that, right? You assumiciding will lead you down a place you do not want to go. Do not assume. We believe the best about one another at all times. And in this moment, I had to practice what I preach. I'm going to believe the best, give you the opportunity to respond and not incriminate you by saying what you feel or what you think right now doesn't matter because this is what we've discussed.
Yeah.
So
And
it's still open, still available.
yeah,
right?
yeah. And that humility part is accepting how you feel in communicating to me and really taking that into consideration.
Yeah.
Because it's prideful to think you're always right. I'm not saying that in this case, but in a lot of relationships you do. Not you, but people do.
I'm like, you better be clear, sir. I'm just kidding. I know that.
Is that if we humble ourselves to receive what our spouse or significant other is communicating, take that into consideration as you communicate. Now, there are instances where you just flat out wrong.
Right.
Or a person is flat out right.
Right.
You still have to accept that. But
Correct.
at the end of the day, you have to want the same thing.
Correct.
So how you communicate, how I communicate.
I'd like to piggyback.
No, ain't no piggyback. How you communicate, how I communicate. Once we humble ourselves to do that in an authentic, real, and loving way, I'm gonna keep talking so she don't get a chance. She ain't getting a chance to talk yet. Is that it comes back to what we desire together,
right?
And which is where's our marriage going? Where's our relationship?
Okay, he's done.
Where's our relationship going?
No, and I agree to all of that, and that's exactly where we were. Was I knew I was right. That's why I started out with that.
That's just can't end the conversation with just I'm right.
Well, this is why, because again, this is the principle from it. I still had to humble myself to be like, just because you're right, am I trying to pull up the past? Am I trying to hurt him? What's my intention? No, my intention is that our marriage is growing and that we're getting better and that we're on the same page. Not that I get to tell you you're wrong and now I get the upper hand.
Yeah.
And that's why I was bringing this up to begin with. What we do, women, I'm sure men as well, but I know for a fact women, we will take the upper hand in the moments when he has done something wrong. And I feel a little shift from communication into that, but I think it's important to say because it's not correct. If I'm supposed to look at your fruit, right? We've been discussing that. We know that. And that's appropriate because God said that we could. But I'm not the end all be all. I'm the judge. So, and I'm supposed to forgive you, period. So if God himself has forgiven you, who am I to be like, actually, let me remind you and hurl the insults and bring all the past and tell you why this matters and why I'm correct. That was not the intention, right? And that's not what happened. But I am bringing that up again because that's an important part for all individuals, all hearts represented. You have to be sure that your intentions are clear. The motive of your heart, that's the only thing God cares about. What is the motive? What is the point of this, right? That you are saying this for, just like you said, the end goal. The end goal in mind is us together, happy, whole, healed, healthy, right? All the things that God desires to have a fruitful marriage. And things that do not edify him are out.
Yeah. And with that in mind, it brings it back to our why. Why do we want to communicate? Why are there times we have to say hard things, confront things? Because our marriage is moving somewhere. And our communication will either hinder that movement or it will propel that movement. And that's every marriage. Really, if you get to the core of issues in marriage, I think number one, it really is communication, because even if there's an offense or a word was said or money was spent or discipline wasn't right for a child, whatever it is, how you communicate why you did it and then addressing or walking through me why I did it, that's going to help our marriage.
For sure.
Right?
For sure.
And so if anybody out there, you're struggling in communicating in your relationships, always find a space where you can talk and keep the one thing at heart, right? So you know what I mean?
Yes, we discussed that because this is what happens. Oftentimes you get into this big argument, and I'm gonna bring up the upper hand again. Yeah. If there has been something, a monster, that's what I'm just gonna keep targeting for the necessary illustration. A monster in your marriage, something that has really been wounding, caused distrust, whatever. You cannot continue to bring the monster in. That is not what God wants us to do. That is not what actually you want to do. It's just our natural behavior. So you have to kill that in every way, because you're not going to hold something against your spouse or someone you love when God's already forgiven them. That's not fair. So I was just bringing that into what you're saying. So you have to remember that in this moment, but also most of the time you find yourself in this argument that started over dishes. And now we're talking about how you handle the kids, right? Like, how did we get there?
Yeah.
We don't know how we got there because the point's not even the point anymore.
Yeah.
We've now moved on.
Yep.
And we have all these offenses and hurts and triggers that we've brought up. And now it's all tangled.
And to your point, you know how you get there? Because you didn't talk about the first issue in the first place.
Right.
So you go from dishes to kids to the car payment to staying out too late to playing video games too long to why? Because you never address those things. So that's why it's important that you address the one thing at a time.
Communicate.
To commune, to come together and say, hey, babe, listen, I love you. And I know you want to go play Fortnite or NBA 2K26 or whatever you play, but I need help with the kids.
Yeah.
Like, okay, can you just be with me from 3 to 5, help me get the kids settled, do homework, pick them up from practice, and then go play, right? Like, say something. But because
actually, that's my question. Can you do that?
Because
for me
he didn't,
today?
man, I'm giving a point right now. Because he didn't unload the dishes.
Yeah.
That's what you're angry about.
Yeah.
But you talk about video game playing time because you didn't talk about video playing time 2 months ago when you should have. So
right. So everything's piled and now is a shaken up bottle of pop that has just gone everywhere.
And here's my other point is that it doesn't all have to be talked about at the same time because there's longevity in marriage. I'm looking to be married to you for the next 50 years.
Say it for the people in the back.
Right?
Say it again.
50 years. So we got time. So by the time we get to our 40th wedding anniversary, we're communicating which one of our college kids we're going to go visit in college this weekend. Like, not the dishes again. You know what I mean? Like, there should be a maturity.
I think all of our kids will be out of college.
To a relationship.
Our grandkids.
Master's degrees, a doctorate school. Who knows, right? So my point is that keep the main thing the main thing.
Yeah.
Whatever the issue is, let's get to it. Let's address it. Here is the other part in communicating in relationship. And this is so important. If you have unresolved trauma, and your spouse is hindered in that area of their life, you have to be patient in communicating, right? So there are some events that happen in a marriage that trigger trauma. Lord help me, Jesus. When trauma is triggered, it causes for more patience. And guess what? Agape is...
That's the answer.
It's patient.
Oh, patient. It's like agape is love.
If agape is patient... and a trauma is triggered, I have to enter patience mode. And we experienced this early in our marriage with intimacy, and we don't have to tackle it in this podcast, but I was frustrated at first until I learned this principle that I have to be patient, right? Because we didn't really talk about why you was responding that way, remember? Early in our marriage. Right. So in me, I had to be patient. So wherever you might be in your relationship, and guess what? We all have trauma. I don't care where you from, how you were raised, the color of your skin. Yeah. We all deal with trauma. And that trauma can be triggered at any moment. It can be an event. It could be a smell. Yeah. It could be a color. It could be a person that looked like someone, right? It could be a season of the year that can trigger trauma. Yeah. And when those things happen, we have to be patient and communicating with one another.
That's true. And then I think seasons in general matter so much because there are times, I mean, when we had little bitty babies and you were working and you'd come home, you'd leave around like before they got up and you'd get home just before they went to bed, and I'm exhausted in between. And our communication then wasn't where I wanted it to be because I was tapped and tired, right? And you were too, for a different reason. Yeah. But we've even discussed that, like, do not... Like, you need each other fully. I remember you saying, like, all these things you're doing are good. You're mentoring these people. Actually, this exact evening, I had just led someone to the Lord. You're like, all these things are good, but I feel like I'm not getting, how'd you say it? I'm getting a part of you.
I'm getting what's left of you.
That's right. I'm getting the leftovers of you. That's what you said. And I was like, oh, I understand that would be terrible because they are good things. Yeah. But obviously a big part of that is this communication, this emotional intimacy, which we're going to tackle, I believe, in the coming weeks. Yeah. But just being able to communicate those things, like you said, is a number one issue, because most of the things wouldn't be a thing if you could communicate it well. If I can explain to you, listen, I mean, we even do this now. I know you're on your way home from a big trip. I would have the house completely clean because that is my heart. Everything would look great. It has been a day. It's not going to be. I just need you to know that's not going to be it. That is a good heads up.
Yeah,
just
it is
because
a good heads
now
up.
we're on the same page, right?
Yeah.
Or I am so exhausted. I know what you would like to take place this evening, but it has been a long day. I know I'm tired. I know, like, all day I've had a headache. Whatever it is, I need to go to bed, right? Now there are times that you sacrifice, even in those times, to just be what you need to be and what you'd like to be for your partner. But there are very real moments that if you could just communicate, this is the thing. This is what's about to happen. This is how it's going to look. And there's no underlying issue or concern or problem. It's just, this is why I'm tired.
Yeah.
That would help so much, right? And seasonally, that matters.
Yeah.
When you have little kids, when your kids are, if you're working all day, if you're, right, whatever it is, you have to get to those points of just at least being able to talk about it.
And you have to know your significant other's communication brand. Right? Like Nike is a brand, Adidas, Under Armour. Some sweatshirts could be made in the same country.
What's my brand?
But the brand is different, right?
You knew it was
and
coming.
So if you're dating or you're looking to date, as you're dating a character, learn their communication brand. My wife's communication brand is, let's talk about it now.
Oh.
Right. So if something happens, she want to tackle it now. So it took me a while to get there because I'm a processor. So if something take place, I need to think, I need to chill, I need to process, I need to think
what's wrong?
And I need to think A to Z. Now, here's the deal. You do lose yourself when you get married, but you don't lose yourself. What I'm saying is, in covenant marriage, there's a dying to you. That's the selfish part of you. Your personality, those things God implanted in you. So I need to die to my selfish want in my marriage, but I do stay true to who I am and how God wired me, right? So I take how I'm wired, I learn how she wired, and we wire it together to make it work. Come on, somebody. That's the real right there, Kev. You feel me?
That's a little heart wire. Wait, I just wanted to say, I don't usually just stare at the left side of your face this often. It's so cute. And I'm going to pierce that ear again. It's pierced.
Man, I get my ears pierced when I was in 6th grade, man. I ain't getting no more earrings.
Yeah,
that season
so
over.
Next podcast,
I'm in the middle of a revelation, Kev, and she talking about some piercing my ears, my guy.
Well, my communication is now, and we're going to re-pierce those ears.
So let me just tie this with a bow really quick, is that because I feel this for young people who might be listening that's dating, that don't get so enraptured in how they look or just their personality. Learn how they communicate. That's why you ask questions about how they were raised, what the personality of their parents are, right? Those things help you learn their communication brand. So I said this on a podcast before, when I grew up in a home where everyone yelled. So when Megan would raise her voice, that was a trigger for me. But she wasn't yelling like my form of communication. She was just raising her voice because that's how she expressed herself. Why? I had to learn her communication brand. Right? So learn your wife's communication brand. And let me say this, fellas, real quick. This is the other bow. Some gifts have two bows, right?
This is for free, isn't it?
Here it is. Listen. You got to be humble. When our dads, or I didn't have a dad, but for the audience, when your dad say, boys don't cry, or get up, wipe it off, those are communication stunting techniques. What men don't understand is that your ability to filter your emotions and get them out is a form of communication that prepares you for marriage, because your wife is emotional. So yes, I tell my son, get up, you're okay. That's the man part of me, but I still have to give him an opportunity to express how he feels. I can't say don't cry. Maybe in that moment he really needs to cry, but after that I need to teach him that, yes, boy, get up. Yeah. Let's go and go make another play.
Yeah, and just for the men listening who are like, actually, I am like that, right? We've talked to several couples that they're like, it's actually reversed. Well, that's what's interesting. I will never say never. But most couples, that each is represented, right? We call one the hard one the soft one. This is the soft, welcoming, gushy. That's obviously Lil Morris, right?
No.
And then there's the hard one. Same face, maybe not as approachable.
And that's Megan.
So anyway, that is usually represented in every relationship, which is great because it counters, it helps.
Yes.
But with that being said, if you are on the other end of that thought process that Lamorris was just saying, then you need to still recognize the free tip in that is if you are the soft emotional fixer, like I'm done. I want to go have fun. I don't want to be upset about this. It doesn't even matter, right? I just need it to be said so that we can move on. If you are that person, then you also have to give space for the processor, right?
Yes.
I kept thinking that the word in communication or the letter, you know how I love them.
Yeah, you do.
In communication is you. You're the one. There is an I also.
That's
I
true.
like that as well.
Communication.
But it's you.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make sure that I and you, that we are taken care of. But I'm the one that's responsible to make sure you are good, that you hear me in a way that you can hear me, in a way that is loving and honoring and kind and gracious.
Yeah.
Leaving room for error.
Yeah.
Like that's what we are called to do.
Yeah.
Like give the grace that you need, right? So I'm going to make sure and do those things. And my heart is that when I sow that, that's also what I'm going to reap. That's also the fruit that I'm going to benefit from.
Absolutely.
Because like we always say, this is not about you. This is about, this isn't even about them.
Yeah.
This is about what God has called you to do. So because I love the Lord, I'm going to do these things and honor you and love you well. And you just reap the benefits of what my obedience is.
Amen. And vice versa, right?
Yeah.
And if that's your motive, if that's your heart in your relationship, in the end, it's all going to be okay. Like trials are coming, things are coming, but it's going to be okay if Jesus is the center of your life. So communicate authentically, be humble.
Yeah.
Right timing, right words.
Yeah.
Tap into those emotions, fellas. Communicate them the best way you know how, and be patient with one another as you do.
Yeah, and I think our biggest takeaway from this is you're gonna have rocks in those ears next month.
Man, I'm not getting my ears pierced. Yo, Megan and Lamorris Crawford here, Covenant Culture Podcast. Thank y'all for hanging out with us.
And be on the lookout.
Be on the lookout. I am not getting my ears pierced.
On the stud.
Yo, if you can subscribe on YouTube, follow us on our social media platforms, Instagram, share, repost. We
it's for the people. Honestly,
man, it is for you.
A journey
Honestly.
of love and faith, a huge leap of faith.
Yeah.
And it's not perfect because we are people, but
that's right.
This is for you. We love y'all.
We love y'all. Thank you for tuning in. Peace.
Bye.
Give me some. Hey, peace.